and welcome to Grandma's Good Time Stories. I have a Bible story to read to you today, and I am reading from this Bible. And the title of our story is called Abram Follows God. So today we're learning about another person in the Bible. He's pretty famous, but maybe you don't recognize the name Abram. You might have to wait for a while to find out his more famous name. Let's read. The people moved away from Babel, and they forgot about God and became more sinful. Well, we remember from our last story what happened when they were building the Tower of Babel and what happened. So we know this is right. Some people moved away, and sadly they forgot God. They prayed, but not to God. Wherever they went, they worshiped something. Many worshiped things that God had made instead of God. They worshiped the sun, the moon, and the stars. Later, they even worshiped rivers, mountains, and hills. Can you imagine worshiping a hill? God made the hill. Worship God. They made images or figures out of wood and stone. And they called these images, the things they made, they called them gods and worshiped them. It was sad. Near Babel, another city was built. And the name of this city was Ur. And it was called Ur of the Chaldees. The people who lived there were known as Chaldeans. I live in a place called Hinton, and we're called Hintonites. So these were Chaldeans. They worshipped the moon god, Ur, and they named their city in honor of that god. So that's why it was called Ur. On the plains, that's a flat place, near Ur lived an old man named Terah, and he was a farmer, a shepherd farmer to be really specific. He had 3 grown sons. I have 3 grown sons. His sons' names were Abram, Nahor, and Haran. They worked with their father. Haran died. That was sad. Well, he was young, and he had a son named Lot. Abram did not worship the moon god, but believed in the true God. Now, about this time of the story, this family left Ur. Terah, remember the older man, he was the shepherd farmer, took Abram and his wife, Nahor and his family, and Lot, the boy who was left with when his father died. They took everything they owned, their tents, their large flocks of sheep, and their herds of cattle. Day after day, they journeyed up the great river Euphrates until they came to a place they called Haran. Here they settled, and time went by, and eventually, remember the shepherd, the old shepherd farmer? His name was Terah, and he died. One day, Abram heard God calling him, and God spoke to him and said, "Leave this country, your relatives, and your father's house. Go to a land that I will show you." A land I will show you. That's in the future. Means he hasn't shown him yet. And he's asking him to go. As if I was asking you to go somewhere and you didn't know where. God keeps speaking though, and he says, "I will bless you and make you a great blessing. And through you, all the families of the earth will be blessed." Now that might have been a confusing thing to hear, but it was actually talking about Jesus. Really? We're only at the very, very beginning of the Old Testament, and here is another reference to Jesus. That's because This meant that a Savior would be born into the family of Abram. That Savior, Jesus Christ, he would be a blessing to the whole world. Kind of neat to see Jesus is talked about so early in the Bible. Well, Abram listened to God, and he followed and obeyed him. So he was leaving his brother. So he said goodbye to his brother Nahor and his family at Haran, and Abram started out. Of course, he took his wife Sarai, and he took his nephew. Do you remember Lot, whose father died? Abram took him with him. That was nice. And their servants. Driving their flocks and herds ahead of them, they turned away from the great river and journeyed southwest toward the land of Canaan. On one side, the mountains rose high, and on the other side, there was desert as far as they could see. On and on they traveled, across rivers, through valleys, over hills, each day farther from their homeland and closer to the land God was providing. When they reached the plain of Moreh, God spoke again, and he said, "This is the land I will give to you and your children." Now he knows, but Abram followed before he knew where. Abram was so thankful. He stopped, he built an altar there, and he worshiped God. Now this land was called Canaan, and the people there were called Canaanites. Abram did not live in the cities, but he chose to pitch his tents wherever he could pasture his cattle and his sheep. That makes sense. His flocks and herds grew larger and larger, and Abram became quite rich. Well, that's the end of our story for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and next time we're going to continue talking about Abram and what happens to him. I hope you enjoyed the story. God bless you. Bye for now.